All right, so today's goal is to learn how to customize the ribbon. Now, maybe you've seen that you can customize the ribbon just in Excel by going to like options. Let's take a quick look over there. So I've got Excel open here and I can choose File, Options, Customize Ribbon. And so here I can make changes to my ribbon here by saying I want to put some of these commands over here onto some of these menus, right? I could put something else onto my home tab by saying I want freeze panes just to add it over here. And actually, I don't know how to do this, but it's something like this. Commands need to be added to custom groups. Make a new group, and then I could add that in here and so forth. We can actually do, there's a way to get macros. I can see my list of my macros here, and I can actually take those macros and put them onto the ribbon. But when I modify the ribbon this way, I am modifying this installation of Excel. And so any changes I make here are great for me, but if I have something that needs to follow the workbook, this won't help at all. And so that's what we're looking at today. We're gonna see how can we change this workbook so that when it's the active workbook, there are ribbon modifications that go along with it. And it would be the case here because here so you may remember, this is the file to download for today off of the blog. So ribbon, charts ribbon.xlsm, that's the file I have open here. This is the one where we wrote macros to like add a new column of data, but we've got a macro that will make the chart, and we've got a macro that will clear the charts, and we've got a macro that will clear the data. I think we put hotkeys on those while we were working, but it would be nice to have a ribbon, and this really belongs following this workbook. So if we give this workbook to someone else, we want that functionality to come along with it. So that's where we're going. It is involved to get there, which is why we're not teaching this in the first week of class. You're ready now. You weren't much earlier in the semester. Okay, to understand that, what we're going to do first is we are going to kind of take a look at an existing workbook that has a ribbon modification in it. And so, you know what? I should have downloaded this earlier, but let me just go ahead and go to My Educator and log in. And 1755 is not our course. We are 1206 AIBA. Manage assessments. And Fallen Angel will do the trick. Preview the assessment. Okay. So here I have a workbook that already has a ribbon modification built into it. You may remember this one. It's got something for like get the ticker and clear the data and so forth. Okay, the first thing to understand is that the Excel XLSM or XLSX format, the file format is actually a zip archive. When I say zip archive, if you know what I'm talking about, raise your hand. Oh, not many. So you've downloaded a compressed folder that you have to extract. Okay, so that's what a zip archive is. And so the whole idea is that back, oh boy, we really go back early to like the 1960s, where we need to be able to make backups of our data. And what did we back them up on? We backed them up on tape. You've seen like really old computers that are like, standing up there and they've got like reel-to-reel tapes on it. Those are backup tapes. So where we could take loaded data and we can kind of spool it off and load it. It was actually, maybe backup's the wrong word, because we didn't really have like internal storage that could store as much as those tapes you needed to store. And so that would be your data. You'd load it up there and be able to do it. Well, we come to the point where we say, we're using these for archives. And so we're going to have lots of files that we need to put onto this tape and be able to back up and restore with it. And so they said, man, it would be great if we had software that could take thousands of files and just make them into a single file. And so that was actually what was referred to as the TAR format. TAR stood for tape archive. That's where the T comes from. And that was nice because it only had a single file. And have you ever been like moving a whole bunch of files and like one or two of them doesn't get moved? Has anyone ever had that experience? Like some kind of little hiccup happens and you're missing a couple of these files. So that was to kind of solve that problem. Then they said, wow, there's a lot of duplication in these files. A lot of these files have a lot of kind of the same data over and over again. We might be able to make it smaller if we compressed that one file that has all the other files in it by saying, oh, look, this string of data shows up a bunch of times. And so what we'll do is use a smaller symbol for that and have a table that says, this little symbol means this long string of characters, and then we can kind of take all those out and shrink it down and then expand it back out. That's what a zip archive is. So it's a bunch of files put together and then compressed using that kind of a compression algorithm. Well, often there's lots of duplication in Excel data. Just by the very nature of like the tables of data that you have here, there's lots of repetition. And so in 2007, when Microsoft changed the file format, they said, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to make this a bunch. It's just going to be XML files that are compressed. So there'll be lots of duplication. XML ends up with a lot of duplication anyway, just because the tags get repeated, but the data gets repeated as well. And so it was kind of a nice marriage. So we say, listen, what the internal file structure really is it's a zip archive of XML files. That seems like a weird thing to tell you at this point, but it's going to be really relevant to us in terms of what we have to do to modify the ribbon. So here's what I'm going to do. Because I know this XLSM format is really a zip archive, I'm going to rename this file. You can't just rename any file into a zip archive and have it expect it to do something, but this one will. And you don't have to do this along with me. You can just watch this, and probably even better if you just kind of watch and try to digest what I'm trying to expose you to here. I'm just going to change this to .zip, and Windows is going to say, that's crazy. That's nuts. Do you really want to change the? Yeah, I do. I really do. Yeah. And so now this looks like a zipped folder. If I kind of zoom in here, oops, Windows plus. Right, so we can see this is a .zip. It looks like a compressed folder here. So now when I can right click this and say extract all. And this will extract that file. And it's asking me, do I want to extract it? Yeah, I think that's a fine place to extract it. And so here it is. This is that file now extracted. So it made a folder. Here's the files. Looking right here, there's one called Excel. I come in here, there's one called Worksheets. There's sheet 1. If I open this up, I wonder what it'll open with. It opens with the Internet Explorer. That's awesome. Close. Come over here, Microsoft Internet Explorer. There we go. Go away. So this is that file. There's not a whole lot of information here. What can we see? Some information about how the widths of the columns are set up. And B3 looks like it has a value of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like B3, C3, D3, they actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 in there. I could come in here and change, literally, I could edit this file, open it up with text, with Notepad, change that, rezip this archive up, open the Excel file again, and that data would be changed. Okay, because that's just what this file format is. Shared strings.xml. So it actually says, strings are kind of all over the place. And so if we have strings that are repeated, we're going to kind of put them here separately. Anyway, so this is the data. Again, I can change this file and rezip that archive, change the name back to an XLSM, and it would open. Now, the part that I want to point out is this here, custom UI. This custom UI folder is the custom user interface. This is where the ribbon modification is built. And so it's right here in this custom UI XML file. So if I open up that one, we should see something that looks a little bit familiar. So we've got here, you can see that it's dealing with the ribbon. And inside the tabs, I'm making a new tab. The tab has a label of assignment. And in that assignment, there's a group that has a label of fallen angel. And there's 2 buttons. One's called process tickers and one's called process results. And so this is, and you'll notice here that when we click this, there's an action called run button. So there's actually a VBA macro in the workbook called run button, and that is what gets triggered when the user clicks on that. So what we've got to do is we've got to modify that Excel workbook with this information. Now, in 2007, when they introduced this kind of new current format for Excel, that they had the whole ribbon interface and everything, those of us have been doing VBA development for years before. We were used to being able to just call methods inside of VBA to pop choices into the menu. Like we could make a new menu because there was no ribbon, it was just a menu. We could put a new menu on, we could put options in the menu, we could have them pop out, and we could do all that through VBA, just run VBA that would change the menu structure. And so we were kind of curious to see, how do you use VBA to modify the ribbon? And the answer is you don't. You can't just say make a new ribbon with VBA. You've got to do this. And in 2007, like when we were kind of interested in kind of learning about this, we're reading the Microsoft instructions, and they start with change the name of the workbook you want to change to say .zip, extract it, add a folder that says custom UI, add a file that looks like this. I mean, it was nuts. We were going, are you kidding me? It was like a major step backwards. And it's, yeah, and still, yeah, you don't reach out to the ribbon with VBA to this day. You just don't do it. But fortunately, you don't have to do all this stuff that I just showed you. You could, it would still work, but there's a tool that we're going to install that will kind of automate much of this process for us. Okay, so ultimately we've got to get this file into that Excel archive structure. That's where we're headed. Any questions on the structure? All right. Close all tabs. That sounds great. So let's come back to our blog. Blog, where are you? And we're going to come down here and we're going to download this, or we're going to follow this link, the Office Ribbon X Editor. So what this tool does, somebody, I don't know who, somebody wrote this tool, and it was available pretty early on, like late 2007, this thing was available. And it's just a tool that will do that process for you. You'll say, hey, this is the file I want to modify, and it does that. It extracts it and puts in the file structure that you need and lets you edit it even without having to see it extracted. It kind of does it all in the background. So we are going to just come down here, and we're going to, down here where it says assets. And I think the best one to choose is this one. So this is it says the .NET framework. .NET 6, I think most of you probably won't have the framework. And so it'll require an additional installation. So I think the best one to start with is this one, the .NET framework installer. So just download that, install it. If it says, hey, you got to, to run this, you've got to have another installation, then come and try this .NET 6 one with the installer. And it's just going to install a small program on your computer. Now, it turns out that I don't have the permissions to install a program onto the Podium, but fortunately, they give us this binaries zip file. So I can just download this, extract it, and then I can just run the executable file. But I think you're better off going through the installation process by using this one. So has anyone done that already here in class and found that it worked? Or still in process? So as soon as, you got it installed and you could open the program, okay? Yes. Okay, good. So a couple other people, and you chose this one that I recommended? All right. So we'll give you a minute to do that. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and open up the one that I just installed and extracted today. So let me come to my downloads. My voice seems a little quiet. Are you hearing me in the back okay? You good? All right, and what was it called? Office Ribbon Editor. And I'm gonna launch the exe, Office Editor exe. And so this is the program that we're looking at. And in fact, I'm just to kind of show it to you, I'm going to open up that same Excel file that I downloaded and then just extracted that we went and took a peek at. So I'm going to go back and rename that archive file back to a zip file. Actually, I'm going to name the zip file back to a .xlsm. And of course, if I double click this, it's going to open up an Excel. But what I'm going to do, and this seems strange, I'm going to open that Excel file using this RibbonX editor. And again, this is demonstration. I'm showing you this, where I'm going to have you do it in a minute. I know some of you are probably still installing. So I'm just going to kind of walk us through this. So I'm just going to choose open, and I'm going to browse to that downloads folder. And I'm going to open this XLSM file using this RibbonX editor program. Now, it's not going to ever show it to me as a workbook. I can't come in here and edit formulas whenever. It's only about modifying the ribbon. And so I can see here that below this, there's a custom UI file. And if I double click it, it's going to show that same file that we saw when we extracted and looked at it. So it really is a way for me just to come here and edit this file and then be able to see the changes. So I'm going to change the label from clear results to say delete results. I'll save that and close it, file close. And then, so I changed it from clear to delete. I'm going to come back here and come to my downloads and just open that file here. Enable editing. And on the assignment tab, it now says delete results, right? So I changed what that ribbon says. So that's the whole point of this ribbon editor, is to be able to give you access to that XML file, and you're still working with XML. It's not pretty, but I think you're up to it. I think you're up to the challenge. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I would like to build a custom ribbon onto this workbook. Maybe I'll call it charts or census or something, because this is our census data. And it will have the tools that we need to clear the data, add a chart for the current row, and delete the charts. We've got those three macros. So I'm going to close this one from an Excel. I don't want to, they've made some changes recently that make me think they're anticipating you kind of having these both open simultaneously. But I think you're best off to say, I'm either going to have this file open in Excel, or I'll have it open in the ribbon editor, but I'm not going to have it open in both at the same time. So I'm going to close it here from Excel, and I'm ready to move on. But I want to make sure that you are that you're ready to go. Is there anyone who's struggling getting the Office ribbon editor installed? Okay. So I've opened up that Office ribbon editor, and I'm going to open that file, which for me is called charts ribbon. I've already renamed it to this semester's suffix. So charts ribbon W22. Open. Charts ribbon W22. Open. Actually, this is interesting. I didn't remember that I actually had a ribbon modification in here. So this is kind of interesting. I must have copied this from some other file when I built it. So I had some students that were using, not this class, but a different Excel class that I was an author of the textbook on. And the teacher at that school said, when my students are doing this exam, I don't want them to have access to help inside of Excel. And I said, that's crazy, because help is just part of Excel. That's just using Excel. Help is there. Why would you turn off help? Nope, I want them to know this stuff without having to go into help. So I want you to figure out a way to turn off the help features. And so it turns out you can make you can make code respond to keystrokes. So you get help in Excel by pressing F1. So step one was reprogram the F1 key so it doesn't bring help up. It puts up a message that says, sorry, no help available. And the whole time I was figuring out how to do this, I kept thinking, that's crazy, but it's what the professor wanted, and it's okay. But I had to figure out how to get it out of the ribbon as well. And so this was it. It was a ribbon modification. So we're here in the tabs. We're using an existing tab. I'll zoom in on this a bit. So there's an existing tab, and the ID of that tab is called tab help, and we just set the visible to false. So I think that means really there's no help tab on this workbook. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to break my rule and open up in both places at the same time. It's okay if I don't edit. So charts workbook. Is the help tab gone on this workbook? Is there normally a help tab right here? I don't know. Yeah, there's a help tab on a blank workbook. It's not here. So this, I didn't really mean to take away help on this assignment or this example, but that's what this existing ribbon modification is. Okay, so normally when you open up a workbook that doesn't have a ribbon on it, this won't even be here. So I'm going to come over here and right click and remove this. You sure you want to remove it? Yeah, I sure want to remove it. Okay, so this is what it'll normally look like when you open it up. So it doesn't even have that custom UI file in it. So here's how you get it. I'm going to choose Insert and then Sample XML, and then I'll choose Excel, a custom tab. And that is going to give me a sample. It's going to give me a sample ribbon modification in here. Are you glad you don't have to type this up from scratch? Yeah, it's good to be able to get started with a sample here. So let me take you through what this is doing, even though we're going to delete most of it. So again, this says, hey, this is XML, so it's a structured document meant for machine to read, and this is a custom UI. We're going to be modifying something in the ribbon, so everything from ribbon to slash ribbon says, hey, this is something dealing with the ribbon. So from tabs to slash tabs, we're modifying the tabs. Now, in this case, we're saying we've got a tab, and when we say it has an ID, that's going to say, you're making a brand new tab. If instead of ID, this said ID MSO, whoops, MSO, like we see down here on some other ones, then that says, oh no, you're not making a new one, you are modifying existing ones. So you've got to give it here like the internal tab name for that. You can have references available online. You can look up what those are. But because instead of MSO, which stands for Microsoft Object, or maybe it's Microsoft Office, one of those two, instead of that, I'm going to leave this at ID, which means I'm making a new ID. I'm making a new tab. It's going to have a label of Contoso, which is a strange word, but it's like an example company that Microsoft uses in some of their examples. It's like that's the name of the company. And it says that we're going to put this tab after the existing tab called Tab Home. So that's saying it's going to go right after the Home tab. So it'll be the second tab in the workbook. If you don't put this insert after on it, it goes just to the very rightmost part of the tab that's available, of the ribbon that's available. Now, what this one is saying here is it's saying, all right, I'm going to bring a group onto this tab. And you've seen the groups, maybe you've never paid attention to, but when you go to a tab, it's got different sections. They have a little label under it and a separator bar between them. And it says that's what the group is. Now, this group says ID MSO. What does that mean? Am I making a new group here? No, I'm just saying there's already a group defined somewhere in the ribbon. I want that group on this new ribbon. And so it's the idea of this is clipboard. So the clipboard group, which you normally see on the home menu, is also going to be on this one. It's still going to be in the old place. It's going to be on this one too. And the font one's going to be here. But we're also making a new group. So instead of ID MSO, it's just ID. We give it a name. It has to be unique. It can't be the same as any other one. And that will have a label on it as well. And then what are we doing on this? We've got 3 buttons. These are brand new buttons. We're not bringing a button from some other group. These are new buttons that we're making. We're calling them custom button 1, 2, and 3. They're going to have different labels. They're all going to be large. By the way, there's two sizes, large and not small. Large and regular or normal. Now I forget. Anyway, it's large and I think it's normal. It's regular?
I don't know, I just guessed.
You guessed. Okay, I think it's normal. Large and normal. Reminds me of the size of olives. You know what the smallest size of olive you can buy? Medium. That's the smallest one. But no one wants to buy small olives, apparently. They go up from there. Medium, large, extra large, colossal. Those are the official sizes of olives you can buy. Okay. So we got the size and then the action. This is the name of a VBA sub-procedure that will be invoked when the user clicks on the button. Now, this image MSO is saying, oh, you know what? There's images built into here, and those images have names. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. You can just pick the one you want. We're going to see how to do that. And so it's making a custom new group, and it's bringing on 3 other existing groups, and that's the ribbon modification. So this time, I'm going to save this and close it. Just Control W, I think. Close. I'm not closing the whole. I'm not closing the whole tool. I'm just closing the file, leaving the tool open. I saved it, yeah, and then I'm going to come and reopen it again. So charts, ribbon, this one. And now it should have that ribbon on it. So here's Contoso. It's the second tab right after home. And it's got, it's kind of interesting. I don't see the other groups that I expected to see over here. So here's clipboard, here's font, and then here's those custom tools. Now, if I try to run these, it's going to try to invoke a sub procedure in VBA with those names. They're not here. So this should give me an error. Cannot run the macro con bold sub. That makes sense. We're going to go get rid of it and we're going to change it altogether, but I just wanted to kind of see the stock example. Questions? Is there anyone who tried this and it didn't work? Is there anyone who tried this and it did work? It did work, okay. All right, so now let me close it from here. Open it up over here. So we had that group. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why these weren't showing up. That's okay, we're gonna get rid of them anyway. So let's go ahead and modify this. Instead of putting it after the home tab, because the truth is, if you're looking for a custom tab, you're not looking after home, you're looking at the far right. So let's put it there, yeah. Say it again. Yeah, I don't know either. Okay, so I'm just gonna delete this one. That'll go into the default place, which is gonna be at the far right. Now, instead of label of Contoso, why don't we call this, we'll call this census. And this will be a custom tab. I'm not going to bring on any of these existing groups. So we've got a new group. Calling it custom group, I think, is okay. My label here, I'm going to call this chart tools. So the main tab will be census, and then we'll have chart tools as a group on it. Let's see, I think I want 3 buttons. So I'll leave them called custom button 1, 2, and 3. No, I think I'm going to name these differently. So we have 3 activities we want to do. One is clear data. So I'm going to call that clear data. Clear underscore data. And we're going to have one called add chart. And we'll have one called remove charts. Now the labels is what the human's going to see, so it'll just be kind of the same thing, but just with spaces and capitals. So clear data. Add chart, and remove charts. I want them all large. Now, for the on action, here's what I'm going to do. It turns out that when you call the sub procedure, not only does it call that sub procedure, but it passes to that sub procedure a reference to the button that was clicked. And so I can ask for the ID. So that's why I wanted these IDs to be meaningful, is because I'm going to have one sub procedure in my code that gets invoked no matter which button gets called. And then we'll look at the button that was clicked, the ID of the button that was clicked, to decide what to do. The reason that I like this approach is because it documents your ribbon inside your code. So by looking at the code, you can see, okay, I've got these buttons and this is what they all do. It's much better than wondering, what does that button do when it calls it? You'll be able to look and see in your code. I mean, you can see what the button does by opening this tool and looking, but quite often when you want to know that, you don't have access to the tool. So the on action is going to be the same on these. And why don't we just call it click button? Click button. I'll call it click ribbon button. I'm going to put that for all three of the actions. All right. So now we got to track down what the identifiers are for the images that we want. Now, it turns out we can put our own images onto this. So that's one option. But let me show you how to do, how to kind of find these built-in ones. So if you search for like ribbon, Microsoft Office ribbon image IDs, I think you'll find a couple of websites that do it. I never have been happy with those. And the truth is, I'm not all that happy with the one that I made. But let me point that out to you. I think it's the one I like the best for this. And so if you come here to MS Office image names, what that will do is that will open up just a Google Photos gallery where I have posted the like the images from the workbook. So someone else went through the work to actually take these screenshots of these images and make them in individual files. And I said, I'm just going to post them on my Google account so that I can scroll through them. This is kind of huge. Can I make this smaller? Yeah. It wants to make them big because it thinks it's a photograph that you want to be able to see, which is kind of nice. That's a little too big though. Okay, so this just lets you, there's a lot of them. This is all of them. And they're going to end up looking a little bit different because I think these were made like in 2000, on the 2010 or 2013 version of Office. And so they update them every once in a while, but they'll generally look very similar to this, stylistically a bit different. Okay, so let's find something. Making a chart is one of the buttons. So I'm just going to see if I can find something that looks like it's making a chart. Should be something that looks like a chart. If you see it, if you see it flash by and I miss it, holler out. It's kind of a chart there. It's like copying a chart. Seems like it should be something more charty than that. I think I'm too far down too. I should be able to like do a click and scroll. Doesn't work. That's a pretty smooth scroll. How can you read it that fast? The one we saw earlier, yeah. Maybe not the best one, but I'm tired of looking. So there's something that looks like new and a chart. I'll take it. So here's what I'm going to do. So in this environment, I'm just going to click that. And that's going to show like the real size of it. But I'm going to click on the little info button upper right-hand corner. And that's going to show me the actual file name. So that's called client report menu.png. but that part right there, client report menu, is the MSO ID of this image. So I'm just going to copy that, and that will be, oh, let's see, that's add chart. That should be this one. So clear data should look kind of like an, oh, there's an eraser. Maybe not the best one, but I'll take this one. So that one is clear all formatting is the name of it. I'm going to put that for clear data. And I'm going to leave my remove charts as a default for now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to bring in my own image for that one. So this should be enough of a ribbon modification to get us going. I'm going to save this, but now before I leave, oh, it might not be a bad idea to click validate. That'll just check to make sure if I've left off a quote or an angle bracket or something. But there's also one here called generate callbacks. So what this is saying is it's going to look at this code and it's going to say, oh, I see that your on action is calling something called click ribbon button. And it's going to build a stub VBA procedure for us that has the right parameters. So I'll click on generate callbacks, and there it is. So it says, oh, you're going to call something called click ribbon button. But the important thing is it's going to give me the parameter that when I click the button, Excel is going to call that procedure and pass in a reference to the iRibbon control. And so that's going to set it up properly for me. Yeah, and I do have to have this in here. It doesn't have to be called control. And this is just an object. It could be just called object. So you can make them up pretty easily. X as object would do it. But this is a little bit better. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to save again. I don't think I changed it. And I'm going to close the file here, reopen it in Excel. And before I lose it off my clipboard, I guess I'm going to do right here at the very top of my module 2, apparently. What's module 1? Oh yeah, module 1 was from where we actually brought in the data. Module 2 is when we're making the charts. And I'm just going to work here on module 2 to paste in that one that's going to be clicked when they click on the ribbon. So for now, let me just put up a message box with control.id. So control is going to be the variable that they use to pass a reference to the ribbon. I can ask for the ID, and that should show me the ID. Ultimately, I'm going to use this to decide what to do. But just for now, I'm going to make it so that when I click the right ribbon, it shows me the ID when I click the button in the ribbon. So here's my census tab. And here are my buttons. You'll see we've got the two ones that we found there. And when I click on that, it's saying the ID for that one is clear data. This one is add chart. And this one's remove charts. Okay, so now I'm just going to put a select statement in here. So the select is going to be based on select case control ID and select case. I should have paid closer attention what they were. They were clear data. And that should be in quotes. One was add chart. And one was remove charts. I don't think that clock's right. Still hasn't been right since Monday. Okay, so for each of these, we just want to run a particular procedure. So when it says clear data, we're going to call clear data. When it says add chart, we're going to call make chart. And when it says remove charts, we're going to call delete charts. But you see how this kind of documents my ribbon for me? I can look right here and say, okay, this is my ribbon. I've got to clear, I've got to add, I've got to remove charts, and this is the local code that it invokes. So go ahead and come back, and we should be able to do this now. So let me go ahead and clear data, clears the data. The way I add the data is by selecting a different county that I want to chart. Should be able to add a chart here for residential population. Adding it just fine. Can remove the charts without clearing the data and add more charts. So the important part here is that this is now built into the workbook. Wherever the workbook goes, this ribbon follows it. Questions? What I'm showing you right now, almost no one knows how to do. And so when you do this at work, people will be like, wow, I had no idea you could do that. So this is great. In fact, last year, right, just shortly before I taught this class last semester, I had a student send me an email. It was a student who'd taken my class literally more than a decade ago. It was like the second year that I was teaching it. I took it in like 2008. And he took a job when he was an accounting student. He took a job when he graduated with one of the big 4 accounting firms in audit. And I just thought, bless you, my son. I can't imagine doing that. And he said the work was tedious. It was really tedious. So much so that I thought I can automate a bunch of this work. And so just for his own use, he started making kind of a set of tools that he would use for doing audit stuff. I don't know exactly what they were. He was at the Denver office, as I recall. And pretty soon his buddies were using the tools, and pretty soon the whole Denver office was using it. And he was letting me know because they had just actually gone like completely company-wide. Like they have some kind of internal newsletter. And he sent me the copy of the newsletter, and it was like, hey, these tools are now available for anyone who works at PricewaterhouseCoopers or whichever, I don't remember which one it was of the. Wow, that's pretty good. That's the only one that comes to mind right now is Deloitte and Touche. KPMG is another one. Is Deloitte and Touche still one? EY? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. And so that happened because he was able to make it into a ribbon, but he went one step further, and that is he made an add-in out of his modifications. So you didn't have to have the workbook. You could just install the add-in, and those tools were always available. We're going to get there today, but a couple more things on the way to there. So our next step is to learn how to put on our own custom icon here for, so not limited to the ones that are built into Excel. So let's just go find one. I'm going to come over here to a browser, and I'm going to search for icon chart. Delete. Let's see what that finds. I'm going to come to, what is it, tools? More? No, tools. Let me come to images. You can see lots of images here. I'm going to come to tools and choose size. Can I say exactly? Oh, I used to be able to say exactly what size I wanted to shoot. You want these to be 32 pixels by 32 pixels. Anyway, let me go ahead and see if, wow, that says delete chart like nothing else. I'm going to take this one. I think. Oh, there we go. Now I'll visit this site. There's a delete chart icon. I wonder if this is free. Download as a PNG. Download size, 7 sizes available. Can I change that size? Download as a PNG. Hoping it's going to give me the chance to change the size. Nope. Okay, that took me here. How do I change the size? Anyone see it? Go to the right. Other size, thank you. 48, 48, 32, 32. I think that's the one I want. Well, I clicked it and it still says this, other size, 32 by 32. We're going back to the drawing board. We'll find a different one. Oh, I'll give that a try. Oh, you think I might do this? Let me open the image in a new window. I just want to see it before I save it, because I'm not sure what it's going to look like. Oh, open a new tab. Thank you. Yeah, I like it. Okay. So I'll save this. Delete chart PNG. I'll put it in my downloads. That's fine. Okay, so I've now got some new image that I want to use. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to close this file because I'm about to edit the ribbon again. Do I want to save this? Yes, I want to save it. And I'm going to open that again in my editor. Okay, so now I'm going to have now. So sometimes, like when you bring an image into a document, what you're doing is you're putting a link to that image. And like when the document uses it, it goes and finds that file out there. That's not what we're doing. Remember that the Excel workbook format is a zip archive. It can have files in it. And so we're about to actually add a new file into the archive. So this image will be a part of the Excel workbook. And so I'm going to choose Insert, Icons. And I'm going to find that delete chart PNG. And it is now put that in here. And you'll see that it's called delete_chart. So I should be able to come here on this one, take off the MSO because it's not part of Microsoft Office, and then put that name, delete chart. It's actually called chart delete. And so that's saying use the image that's already built in here with that identifier. So now I'll save that and close it. Open it again here. And it should have that icon into the ribbon. So there are hundreds and hundreds of icons built into Excel. And you'd think with so many that there are, there's one for everything you need. There's not. Do be sensitive to copyright, and let's just go ahead and take a look here. I mean, it's legal for us to use that for this in-class demonstration. That falls under the fair use clause. But when you're looking at these sites, they're going to tell you if they're free or whatever. So, there'll usually some information about licensing where you can find out. Say it again. So it says free chart delete. That'd be great. So maybe it's free anyway. But just be sensitive about that because some people spend a lot of time making these kind of extensive icon libraries, and usually like to use them. It's a couple of bucks or something. So if you got an icon that you like and you think, it's worth throwing a little bit of money to the person who developed it. Okay. So that's doing chart. Now it turns out that you can do more things than just put buttons here. So you can have like drop downs in the ribbon, like you can put things in, then you can tell which one's selected when the user clicks on something else and so forth. That's quite a bit more complex, and it's beyond what we're going to do here in this class. But I want to let you know that that's available. Kind of anything that you see in the ribbon over here is something you can do. So I come here to home, I can see, oh wow, there's something I can drop down here. yeah, we could do that kind of stuff here as well. I'm assuming that we could do this. I've never done this, but I'm assuming you can do that kind of stuff, those things as well. Okay, questions on making a ribbon modification? Okay, so our next step then is going to be, let's figure out how to save this as an add-in. So if we have an add-in and we install the add-in, we can, the tab will be here all the time. Right now, this tab is tied to the workbook. Now, it turns out this is not a really good set of tools to have for an add-in because it kind of depends on this data being here. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and remove charts wouldn't be bad. If you ever, that'd be a general tool that remove whatever charts you have on a sheet. Let's add one more thing that might make a little more sense to have. So I guess what I'd like to do is I'd like to say, maybe I've got some kind of formatting that I often have to do. Like I've got data that kind of comes in maybe from a web, from a database query or something, and I always want to make this header look like a header. So I'm going to write a little procedure here. It won't take very long. It just says, listen, take whatever rows I have selected, find the header for that, and change that to be bold and centered and colored, background color, and so forth. So let's just call that one sub format header. And here's what we're going to do. Let me dim RNG as a range. Set RNG equal to whatever is selected, selection dot entire column. So whatever rows I have selected, that'll expand it to the whole column. And I'm really just after the first row of that. So rows 1. So that should say whatever the selection is, that should now refer to the top cell, the top row in that selection. I'll just set some properties of this. Range dot font dot bold equals true. Range dot font dot color equals VB white. Range dot interior dot color equals the devil's color. And let's do a horizontal alignment. Range dot horizontal alignment equals XL center. All right, let me just go ahead and test that code here. So I've got that selected, so I'm expecting it to modify this top center, make the cell, make the text white, make it bold, make the background red. That's what it does. Okay, so that's, if I find myself doing that over and over again, it might be nice to have a button in the ribbon to do it. So let's just go ahead and we'll add this in a new group. So we've got chart tools, then we'll make one called format or something. So one more time to the editor, save this and close. And I will reopen it in my editor. Okay, so I've already got that group. Zoom in. Maybe I'll just copy this whole group and duplicate it. I'll call this one custom group 2. Instead of chart tools, this will be formatting. Only going to need to have one button in here. And it will be, oh, what did I call that procedure? Does anybody remember? Doesn't really matter. I'm going to call this format. I think I called it format header. Doesn't need to be named the same, but wouldn't hurt. Format header, on click, it's going to call the same thing. And image. I'll just pick an image quickly here. I don't know if that really says format header, but I'm going with it. Add group PNG. So again, that's going to be image MSO because it's an existing one. Add group PNG. Save that. I'll go ahead and validate just to make sure. It's a lot of typing and changing, so I check that. That's good. Close that. Open it here. So now we've got the format header. Let me go ahead and just change the code to invoke that, and then we'll be ready to make an add-in. So it's called format header. I'm going to give myself another one here. And it says format header. We're going to call format header. Okay, so that should now, let's clear the data. Oh, doesn't clear the heading. Let's add a few more here and we'll format the header. Okay. So how do we take this workbook that we've built and make it into an add-in that you could just give the add-in file to someone, they could install it? Now remember, your code is always available if you put it in your personal.xls, your personal.xlsb file, right? If you record a macro into the personal macro workbook, that code's always available. But that's kind of a place where you're doing your own stuff. What we want to say is, I want to take this code that I've written here, and I want to give that to someone else and make it always available. That's what the add-in is for. Do we have time to learn how to make an add-in in the next 12 minutes? Yeah, with time to spare. Here's how you do it. So I've got this made the way I want it. I'm going to choose File Save, and then File Save As. There are three main different kinds of add-ins, and this is one of them. You can write add-ins like with a different programming language, with like C#. You can write an add-in that you could then install. It's called a COM add-in. This is a VBA add-in. You can also write add-ins using JavaScript, and that's really different than this. They kind of go through a different process altogether. But this one's really simple. So where am I going to save? Let me browse. Yeah, I'm going to call it, and I'm just going to change the type here. Let me zoom in a bit. So the type that I'm looking for is just going to be an Excel add-in. I feel like I must have missed it already. It should be an XL AM, I think. Here it is, Excel add-in XL AM. Windows minus, be too big. So now that's going to save it as charts ribbon w22.xlam. Great, I'll save it. Now, you'll notice that I still have open XLSM. So you don't really say, I've got my add-in file and I'm editing it. You say, I've got my workbook file, and it's almost like save this as an add-in, but you don't edit those. You go back to your original workbook file and you kind of export it as an add-in. That's how it works. All right, now let me go ahead and close this one. I'll just open a new workbook. So here I've got no, I didn't pay attention to where it saved that. The good news is it probably saved it in a really easy place to find if it didn't save it right here. XLAM. I think it's going to be in the default place to find it. So let me come to my developer tab and do Excel add-ins. Browse. And there it is. Yeah, so it said we're going to put it in the default place where you look for your add-ins. I'm going to bring in the charts add-in, say OK. File named that already exists in this location. Really? I guess I do want to replace it. And now I've got that census there. Let me go ahead and just put some data in here. Tab B. And I should be able to invoke that code. So I've built now an add-in. Now it turns out all those worksheets that were a part of my workbook, they're there too. I can write code that, so that add-in can have code that refers to and does stuff on those worksheets, but there's nothing that you can do to make a worksheet from an add-in be displayed to the user, but your code can still refer to them. That's kind of something to know about that. That took 3 minutes to teach you how to make an add-in. Questions? Let me just show you a couple more of the resources that we have dealing with charts. So we've used the image names, Office image names. We've used the editor. I'm going to go to this website here. This is the Ron de Bruin site on ribbon modification. In 2007, when the rest of us were wondering, how do you work with the new ribbon format? This guy in the Netherlands, Ron de Bruin, wrote a web page that says, here's how you do it. And it is kind of like, to this day, it is like the go-to place when you're wondering what is possible with modifying the ribbon in Excel. And so this is a site that will give you lots of examples about things you can do. By the way, if you ever see a button show up in your ribbon that has a smiley face and it says, click me, if you click it, you deserve whatever happens. I don't know what it's going to do, but whatever it did to you, you deserved to have it happen. And so anyway, so this is the place. This is actually, right, this is where I found the link to get that ribbon editor. You know, I don't know that he had anything to do with developing it. Then he's got some other stuff here as well, but you know, this is like the reference on what can you do with the ribbon, and how to do it, how to get it done. And I think he's a Mac user because he has lots of comments about this works for the Mac or this doesn't work for the Mac. There's some tips for the Mac and so forth. Apparently not as many tips for the Mac as there are for Windows. And then maybe just a last thing to introduce to you. Well, I guess I'm not going to show it to you. I'm going to point it to you in case you want to play with it. I got to come back here. So up here at the top, there's this ribbon wizard 2.xlsm. That was my attempt at writing a workbook that would kind of automate the process of building a ribbon. So if you open that up, that's a workbook. You can actually specify the images that you want, like on a worksheet. You name the tab of the worksheet, what you want the ribbon to be named, and it will kind of do that same thing. Take the Excel file, unzip it, make the changes that you've specified there, so kind of be able to do it graphically. But there's about 10% of the students, you know, and I thought this is the way I'm going to teach it. About 10% of the students doesn't work on their computers, and I don't know why. So, but anyway, if you kind of want to explore a way to do it graphically, you know, kind of without having to deal with the XML, that's an approach for you there. All right, I think I'm going to call it good there, unless there are any other questions. All right, folks, thanks for coming. Stop the share and end the video.